Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 12, Perfect Society, 4 Spiritual Classes, Text number 11. Etat sarvam grihastasya samam natam yaterapi kuru vritera vikalpena grihastasyartu kaminaha. Etat sarvam grihastasya samam natam yaterapi kuru vritera vikalpena grihastasyartu kaminaha. Vikalpena grihastasyartu gaminaha. Itat sarvam grihastasya samanitam yaterapi kuru viter vikalpena grihastasyartu gaminaha. Etat, this, sarvam, all, grihastasya, of a householder, samam natam, described, yateyapi, even of the person in the renounced order, Guru Riti Vikalpena, to follow the orders of the spiritual master. Grihastasya, of the householder. Ritu Gaminaha, accepting sex only during the period favorable for procreation. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. All the rules and regulations apply equally to the householder and the sannyasi, the member of the renounced order of life. The grihasta, however, is given permission by the spiritual master to indulge in sex during the period favorable for procreation. Purport. It is sometimes misunderstood that a grihasta, a householder, is permitted to indulge in sex at any time. This is a wrong conception of grihasta life. In spiritual life, whether one is a grihasta, vanaprastha, sannyasi, or brahmachari, everyone is under the control of the spiritual master. For brahmacharis and sannyasis, there are strong restrictions on sexual indulgence. Similarly, there are strong restrictions for grihastas. Grihastas should indulge in sex only in accordance with the order of the Guru. Therefore, it is mentioned here that one must follow the orders of the spiritual master. Guru Vritir Vikalpena. When the spiritual master orders, the grihasta may accept sex life. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 7:11. Dharma viruddha bhuteshu kamosmi. Dhammo viruddha bhuteshu kamosmi. Indulgence in sex life without disobedience to the religious rules and regulations constitutes a religious principle. The grihasta is allowed to indulge in sex during the period favorable for procreation, and accordance with the spiritual master's order. If the spiritual master's order allows the grihasta to engage in sex life at a particular time, then the grihasta may do so. Otherwise, if the spiritual master orders against it, the grihasta should abstain. The grihasta must obtain permission from the spiritual master to observe the ritualistic ceremony of Garbhodhan Samskar. Then he may approach his wife to beget children, otherwise not. A brahmana generally remains a brahmachari throughout his entire life. But although some brahmanas become grihastas and indulge in sex life, they do so under the complete control of the spiritual master. The kshatriya is allowed to marry more than one wife, but this also must be in accordance with the instructions of the spiritual master. It is not that because one is a grihasta, he may marry as many times as he likes and indulge in sex life as he likes. This is not spiritual life. Spiritual life, one must conduct one's whole life under the guidance of the Guru. Only one who executes his spiritual life under the directions of the spiritual master can achieve the mercy of Krishna. Yasya prasada bhagavat prasada. One desires to advance in spiritual life, but he acts whimsically, not following the orders of the spiritual master. He has no shelter. Yasya prasadam nagati kutopi. Without the spiritual master's order, even the grihasta should not indulge in sex life. Few repetitions of that. You ask someone, what did you hear? Well, do as you feel like it. Etat sarvam grihastasya samam natam yatiryapi guru vritir vikalpena grihastasya artakaminaha. All the rules and regulations apply equally to the householder and the sannyasi, member of the renounced order of life. The grihasta, however, is given permission by the spiritual master to indulge in sex during the period favorable for procreation. Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutaya Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Tiramane Namaste Saraswatam Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskyatyade Siddharane. It's obvious what Prabhupada is emphasizing here. Not only what Prabhupada is emphasizing, but what the verse says. That sex life is not for recreation. Although some people think sex life is for recreation. Otherwise, why get married? If it's such a burden, then, especially in modern society. In Vedic society, there was another kind of rasa, or a taste, besides just sex life. In other words, if we even look at the old movies of, for instance, Sita's wedding. Has anyone ever seen Sita's wedding? What about Sita's divorce? That's your favorite one. She gets captured by Ravana and has to enter into the fire and then put into the forest. It's called Sita's divorce, or separation. But if we look at the old movies, Indian movies, we can see that actually many times there's hardly any action. So people don't like to watch them because it's all emotions. And people have no emotions nowadays. I mean, subtle emotions or more spiritual emotions. All they have is, food, rah, 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 more. That's as far as their subtle emotion goes. It's more or less, they don't necessarily look like tigers or deer or other kinds of animals, but more or less that's how they act. It's not that every animal in the forest is a tiger. There are also deer. Oh, nice animal, sweet animal. But it's an animal. Even the cat, well, my pussy cat, if you were a mouse, you'd be a meal. Your sweet pussy cat would eat you. You wouldn't think, my master has become a mouse, I must treat him nicely. No, who care who you are, man? So, in modern society, where people are not very much aware of emotions, subtle emotions like feelings, like things like surprise and compassion and even pretty affection. These things are not so common in modern society. Therefore, when they see that in a movie, no one's dying, there's no fighting. There's, why doesn't he just grab her and throw her on the bed or something? Why all this? What's all this hesitation about? What is he doing? Because people have become very, very covered by the modes of material nature, and therefore they can't appreciate anything except for very, very gross sense gratification. Eating, sleeping, mating, defending. If you look at the modern movies, there's a heavy emphasis on sex and killing people, defense, and a little bit, when they get tired, then they eat some dead animal and they have a big feast, and then they go to sleep and they wake up and go back to killing people. But therefore, there's no rasa or taste in household life except for gross sense gratification. And if that's not there, then in Kali Yuga, immediately there's divorce, get lost. We got to get divorced. And therefore, when they hear this, for instance, Prabhupada was at 26 Second Avenue in 1966. Maybe it was early 67. And there was a group called the Thugs. I'm sure you probably never heard of them. They came to my university and did a concert there. The only thing they sung was sex songs. Songs about sex. And it wasn't subtle either. And at 26 Second Avenue, has anyone been to 26 Second Avenue? So it's rather a tiny storefront. And they came in and wow, the devotees were there. Wow, the Thugs are here. They were a famous group at that time, or infamous, depending on which side of the spectrum you were. And Prabhupada chose to speak that evening about only sex for procreation. So needless to say, Prabhupada started his speech, got into it, and after a short time, these musical group got up and left. It wasn't what they came to hear about. And when Prabhupada explained, Mr. Goldstein, who was our lawyer at that time, Prabhupada said, but Prabhupada, you can't deny the feelings that a man feels for a woman or a woman feels for a man. And Prabhupada said, more or less, he said, we can't deny the Acharya's teachings either. And Hari Griva stands up and says, Prabhupada, if there's only sex once a month for procreation, it's not even worth it. And Prabhupada said, oh, you've understood. Now people first of all, they're not trained like that. It's like, where are these people coming from? Have they landed from Mars or something? I mean, what century they're in? But the fact is that the more one indulges in unrestricted sense gratification, the more one falls into the bodily concept of life, and the more one is more or less forced to engage in more and more sense gratification in spite of whatever the reactions are. It's not that unrestricted sex life produces more and more love and that people fall more and more in love with each other. They get more and more disgusted with each other. It's like if you take bubble gum and you put it in your mouth, at first there's a little sweetness, but you keep on chewing, there's no more sweetness left. You're just working your jaws. You have a choice. Either you spit the bubble gum out, or you get another piece to chew on. So nowadays people are thinking the whole aim of life is just to chew on each other. And at the beginning there's some sweetness. And after a while all the sweetness goes away and they're just chewing on each other. There's no taste anymore. So what do? They just spit each other out. Sorry, lady. Oh. find another piece of bubble gum to chew on. So it's not that love increases the more one has unrestrained senses. Although they claim, I'm in love with you. I love to chew on you. Is that what they're saying? Till I want to spit you out. Nowadays, people don't even get married because they realize, well, we're just going to be able to chew for a little while and then we have to spit each other out. So why go through the whole ceremony? By the time it's done, we're finished with each other. But actually, if Krishna is in the center and our actual love awakens for Krishna, then we'll love everyone. What to speak of our wife or children. They will actually have real love for everyone, and we'll be able to sacrifice for them. Act as Krishna's representative and act for their benefit rather than for their destruction. So it is not that the Vedic culture was, repressive. Everyone was just, oh my God, this is too much. I can't stand this. I think, no, actually people were actually happier in the Vedic culture because they knew whatever they were doing was actually bringing them to a higher consciousness. So they were feeling more and more happiness and their relationships were deepening more and more with each other because they were acting out of love rather than lust, anger, and greed. And therefore, in the Vedic culture, when the man would die, the husband would die, then often the lady would enter into the fire of his cremation out of separation. Because there was actually some love, which is inconceivable nowadays, that a lady could actually feel that much affection for a husband, she feels separated. Nowadays, if they burn the husband, she's in the bank trying to figure out how to make a withdrawal of all his money. The only separation she has is separation from his bank book. But that's the culture, and because people are overwhelmed with this culture, they believe that's all that exists. There's nothing higher than this. This is reality, and you have to accept it, or else you'll just have to artificially repress yourself. So, if one is able to develop Krishna consciousness, then it's possible to actually develop a higher taste. And in that higher taste, then it's tuchavat. As Jamunacharya said, Yadavadi mama cheta Krishna padara vinde, nava navarasa damanyutam rantimasit. So he was a great king, and he was able to enjoy practically unlimited sense gratification. But when he became a pure devotee of Krishna, he says, Yadavadi mama Krishna padara vinde. Now that I'm remembering Krishna, feeling ever new pleasure in his association, Yadavadi mama Krishna padara vinde, nava rasa damani rantum asit. So unless one is able to experience that higher and higher pleasure, then it's very difficult to give up sense gratification. Even on a minor level. Yada, how's it go again? I just confused myself. Back to the Bhagavad Gita. Yada. Okay, I'll try. Okay. Yadavadi mama Krishna cheta padara vinde navana rasa damanyunitam asit kadavadi batas nari sangame smaryamane bhavati mukha vikara shistivanam cha. And he was experiencing so much happiness, and when he remembered his previous relationships and sense gratification, he became disgusted. So that level of spiritual consciousness is not so easy to obtain, especially in Kali Yuga, but it's possible if we accept it. There's one thing about following the four regular principles, but to actually accept that we voluntarily follow the four regular principles and we want to follow the four regular principles. Whether we have the highest taste or not, but we want to follow them because we know that's the only way forward. Unless we tolerate, then there's no way forward. And if we don't tolerate, there's every opportunity to take many, many steps backwards. Although at the beginning, if you look at Prabhupada's instructions, Prabhupada gives you different instructions. For instance, at the beginning, Prabhupada to his disciples, he just wanted them to get married. He didn't stress, this idea of only sex for procreation, because he realized they wouldn't follow it anyhow. They wouldn't even understand what you're talking about. And therefore, he didn't emphasize that. And unfortunately, then there's devotees, they say, well, Prabhupada just said sex life is not illicit if it's in marriage. Yeah, if you're on practically the animal level, then as we read in the previous verses, then if you get married, it's a step up. Then at least you're restricting yourself to one woman. Nowadays, marriage means you have one woman and 10 girlfriends, or one husband and 10 boyfriends. And that's considered a bona fide marriage. And who knows, And if one man has 10 wives in the Vedic culture, they think, oh, this is horrible. Better to have 10 girlfriends. Now in the Vedic culture, one had 3 wives. I think only kings had 10 wives, or emperors had more. Then he had to maintain all of them very nicely. Nowadays, you have one wife, you don't even know, you may maintain her. You have so many girlfriends, you give them gifts once in a while, give them a box of chocolate, but that's it. So human civilization, well, I guess, has lost its direction. That's obvious. And any restriction is probably welcome. In other words, if people just get married and keep their marriage vows, I guess they still make marriage vows, I don't know. That's why people don't get married anymore. They don't want to make these vows. It's too heavy for them. But if they actually make a vow, one wife, one husband, then that's great advancement for most people. And if they actually want to become spiritual, then they have to follow this advice here, that there are 4 regular principles, and the 4 regular principles include sex only for procreation. If they want to come to the spiritual platform, they can indulge in sex life unrestrictedly and think they're going to come to the spiritual platform. It's just not possible. As soon as one becomes attached to the objects of the senses, then lust, anger, bewilderment, delusion, bewilderment of memory, and intelligence is lost. And unless we have the proper intelligence, we can't fix our mind upon Krishna. It's not possible. It requires an extremely powerful intelligence to be able to control the mind and fix it on Krishna. So the intelligence has been lost, is covered over by lust. It's not possible to make any spiritual advancement. On the other hand, if one can simply remain on the platform of some kind of regulation, that's called religiosity. Some kind of religious principle. But of course, if one restrains from illicit sex life, at the same time takes intoxication, eats meat, and mentally speculates and gamble, it won't actually be possible to refrain from unrestricted sex life. It's not possible. The senses will simply drive one into unrestricted sense gratification. You can't allow the tongue to do whatever it wants, take intoxication, eat animals, and at the same time try to restrain sex life. That's not possible. But if one can do that, then one can develop mercy, austerity, truthfulness, and cleanliness, and come gradually to the human form of life. And through the human form of life, understand what actually prosperity is in the material world, what will actually be conducive to the mode of goodness, and then come to learn to tolerate the urges of the senses, and eventually accept actual devotional service, actually service with devotion. And then rise up to actual knowledge of Krishna, become aware of actually who Krishna is, and then meditate in trance upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Otherwise, if we can't even get from the lowest stage, and one is claiming to be on the highest stage, then that one is simply deluded or is a hypocrite. So although it's not recommended for everyone to even try immediately to become a devotee. Of course, everyone's recommended to chant Hare Krishna, but an actual devotee is not so easy to become. It requires great intelligence to actually not only try to fix the mind upon Krishna, but actually just to accept the four regular principles. It's not a question of even following them for some time, but actually accept them with determination. Then one can actually go forward in a real way. But if one is thinking, at the time of initiation, I have my fingers crossed, I'm not obliged for anything. Besides that, I got initiated 10 years ago, so that's a long time. I have another body now. My body has changed. My mind has changed. Everything's changed. So one has to become convinced that these four regular principles are the principles of freedom, as it says in the Bhagavad Gita. Raga dvesha vimuktayistu vishen indriyastran atma vaishara videyatma prasadam adhigachiti. So Prabhupada uses the word freedom. Most people think, well, these are the regular principles of repression. See if freedom is used in this verse. But a person free from all attachment or aversion, able to control his senses through regular principles of freedom, can obtain the complete mercy of the Lord. So that we have to become convinced of, and the only way we can become convinced is to actually take japa seriously, reading Prabhupada's books seriously, serving the devotees seriously, worshiping the deities seriously, and trying to spread this movement seriously. Otherwise, it's very difficult to get such a taste to actually become convinced that these are principles of freedom rather than principles of repression. Of course, most devotees, they think, all right, prasadam is nice. I don't really need McDonald's hamburgers anymore. In terms of intoxication, never liked it anyhow. And gambling and speculation, well, that's, no one knows if I'm speculating. I'm always speculating, so it's kind of normal. And I never went to the casino anyhow, because I didn't want to lose any money. But this other thing, who knows? It's always there in the back of my mind, just in case. No one has to understand the value of the principles, and then one can actually move forward. And just one last thing, as it says here, brahmanas, if we actually come to the mode of goodness, then it's possible to actually move forward. If we're still absorbed in the modes of ignorance and passion, if when I'm in the temple, there's a little halo around my head, and I'm good, I don't yell at anyone, my sense is more controlled, and I sit there chanting something like Hare Krishna. Then That's all right. But outside, we also have to act in the mode of goodness. And then when we chant, well, actually the chanting will be more effective. And if we can come to the mode of goodness, then these things will not disturb us. These sensual impulses. What does that Krishna say? Trividha narakasya dwaram nashitam atmanaha kama krodha tata lobhas tasmat etam trayam chaja. There are 3 gates leading to hell. In case you wanted to get an interview with Yamaraj, you heard he was a Mahajan and you wanted to visit him. So there are 3 gates, and all you just have to go through these 3 gates, and Yamaraj will be there. You can get a personal interview with him. Matter of fact, he'll review your whole life with you. And then lust, anger, and greed. There are 3 gates to hell. And every sane man should give them up because they lead to the degradation of the self. And just by giving them up, etanyapi, etera vimukta kontiya. Just by giving them up, etera vimukta kontiya. Tribi das naraki dwara. That doesn't sound right. Etera vimukta kontiya. Tamo dwara sravirnara. Atra yamana shreyas tatoyati param gitim. That anyone who gives up these 3 gates performs activities conducive to self-realization, and thus he obtains the supreme destination. And what's the process? Believe it or not. Yakshasri vidim utsrija vartate kamakarata dasasidim avapnotina sukamna param gitim. Anyone who rejects Shastra and acts whimsically, as Prabhupada mentions in this verse, whimsically, can obtain neither peace nor happiness nor the supreme destination. Tasmat shastram pramanam te karya vyastito gyatva shastram vidanokta karma iharasi. Therefore, one should know what is to be done and what is not to be done through the Shastra. And knowing such rules and regulations, one should act so one can gradually be elevated. So either we read Shastra or we hear Shastra, or somehow or another we follow it, then we have to follow Shastra. And Shastra says that the biggest obstacle, Mahat Sevam Dwaram Ahur Vimuktes, to associate with the Mahatmas, is a door to go to the spiritual world. Tomorrow, Dwaras Yoshite Sangi Sangam. And to unrestrictedly associate with women or men who are attached to women is a gateway to hell. So that's what Shastra says. If we don't like it, then good luck. But don't claim that you're following Shastra. Don't find something in Shastra to contradict what Shastra says. And then think that, that's your way and I have my way and we're both equal. It's all the same. Whatever you like. As William Blake said, we both read the Bible day and night. I read black and you read white. It's all the same, Prabhu. Okay, I'll stop there. Thank you. Any questions? So what did you understand? Let's see. What did you understand?
Well, that between woman and a man, between husband and wife, sex is only for procreation, not recreation. Because if you do it for recreation, then that leads to the gradually lowering your consciousness, and that leads to divorce. So
anger, especially frustration
and anger.
Generally, most men and women aren't really developing a very solid relationship on frustration and anger. I hate you. Well, I hate you more than me. Well, that's. I'll catch up to you. Don't worry.
But today, people even don't want to get married because they know that after some time they will be like a chewing gum. It's not sweet anymore, so they will just.
There's divorce, and I guess people get married nowadays in Slovenia. Some people do.
Yeah.
Is there still divorce in Slovenia?
Yes.
I guess it went down since people don't get married anymore. Anything else?
One joke. I don't know if I will remember strictly. When begin a relationship, the man says woman, oh, I love you so much that I want to eat you. Da bi te pojedel, ne? To eat you. But after years and years, he is sorry that didn't do this.
You're so sweet, I want to eat you. Or it says, in English, they say courting. Courting means when the man and the woman, they have dates with each other, they get to know each other. That's called courting. You've heard that before, courting? You heard that? Yeah, courting. But what begins with courting winds up in court. Now, real grihastha life, of course. Actual grihastha life can actually be quite pleasant. But it gets pleasant enough that you get the highest taste you can get in the material world from that. And then after a while, you realize that if you're chanting Hare Krishna and performing devotional service, the relationship between the husband and wife is sweet because of devotional service, but the relationship with everyone becomes sweet. Therefore, neither the woman or the man think they need each other because they have a sweet relationship with everyone. So they don't need that particular rasa anymore with one particular, with that particular husband or wife. Because they still have a sweet relationship, but they realize now they have a higher business in Krishna service to give that sweet relationship to others. All right, we'll stop there. Thank you very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Gaur Premanande.